It's the final percent. The final percent.
All right, this is the Final Percent podcast with the new series, Colorado Impactors, and I have a wonderful guest who's become really a friend as of late. I just got to go to your retreat with Northstar, and it was I've made lifelong friends, and I thought it was really interesting because he, instead of the traditional retreat where it's everyone do this team building and everyone do this and everyone do that, it was organic relationships and just kind of letting God do his work of connecting the right people. And I can tell you, I mean, I've made lifelong friends. I still talk to this day. And so, I mean, he's a dot connector, and I constantly talk about the people who add value in life because information is kind of everywhere now, but it's the people who can take this piece of information and this piece of information and make it make sense to you. And you're the consummate dot connector. So welcome, and thank you so much for coming.
Well, Greg, I'm honored to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, we're going to talk a little bit about your past because you've made one of the premier companies in Colorado in the commercial real estate space. And I'm really interested to kind of dig in on your how and your why. A lot of people know the what because you've become a real force in the space. But I want to know a little bit about the motivation behind things and certain things in your past of, you know, how did we get here? And then we'll talk about here. But Northstar is 20 years old.
Yeah, that's amazing.
We've
been blessed.
It's incredible to think about, and 20 years ago, when you're thinking, "Hey, I'm going to start an anything," how do you start something that ends up where you're at here? But you saw it, and like any entrepreneur, you saw it where it is now, but you saw it 20 years ago.
Yeah. Well, you know, I came from a family of entrepreneurs and a family of modest means, grew up on the Western Slope, but I just saw how my parents, through hard work, were able to create value and lasting value and make a fingerprint, you know, in the community. And so I went to school up here at CU Boulder.
Oh, great.
And,
okay. So it's full circle right now.
I know. I got it right back here. I was here on Saturday night for the football game.
Oh,
we actually
awesome.
won, which was kind of nice.
Awesome.
But so anyway, went to school in Boulder and then was a broker for 7 years with Cushman & Wakefield, you know, trying to learn the business, meet some of the right people and make a little bit of money. But I was always interested in long-term wealth creation. No matter where I was, no matter what I was doing, somehow, some way, wealth was being created and creating value for others. And so 20 years ago, I decided to found Northstar Commercial Partners. And I saved up enough money to live for 12 months. And I told my wife at the time, I said, you know, I'm going to take hopefully a step backward for a giant leap forward.
Yeah.
And I'd saved up that money and said, we're going to go make a run of it. And here we are 20 years later, and it's amazing to see all the things that have happened between here and there.
Well, that's a pretty good run.
We've been blessed.
Well, I think one of the things to identify right there for the entrepreneurs that are out there is one of the I quote Jim Rohn all the time because he's one of my favorite motivational speakers to listen to, and he says, when you're going to start something, work full-time on your job and then part-time on your fortune. And you were able to do that because if you listen to what he said, he didn't jump off the proverbial cliff and build a plane on the way down. He saved up 12 months so he could do it right. He learned for 7 years so that you could do it right. You went to school for it. And so there's a fair amount of education, both traditional and real world experience that you brought to the table when you were building this.
It was, you know, and I asked the question to myself, if I don't at least go out and try, then I truly have failed. And so this idea of at least trying, and it was a passion of mine since I was young. And so, again, I had saved up enough money to live for 12 months, and I told my wife, I said, you know, worst comes to worst, we will not be successful. We'll go down to Mexico and drink a lot of tequila for a week or two, and then come back and become a commercial broker again. But it takes a lot of work when you're starting your own company, and I had to do it all from soup to nuts. Coming up with the company name, identifying deals, doing all the accounting and everything, and you have to think as you move along. But it is so invigorating and so exciting, and I recommend that if people are ever thinking about starting their own company, give it some thought and then just try. And it's just an amazing opportunity.
So where does the name Northstar come from?
It's a great question. So at the time, I looked out and there was a lot of people who had named their companies after themselves. And I wanted something larger than myself. And I also, at the time, was in my 20s, and I needed to combat my age at the time because back then, being young in my business, commercial real estate, was not necessarily an attribute, a positive attribute. It was something that people said, well, look, you don't have any experience. You're 20-something years of age. My kid, who's your age, is out, running around Europe in a backpack. Why should I trust you with millions of dollars of my own money investing alongside of you? So I wrote down over 100 names of different things, and I wanted something that was timeless, something larger than myself. And I came up with this idea of Northstar and this concept that you think about people who are looking for a fixed, dependable point in the sky. And as they were seeking their fortunes, using the Northstar as their guiding point, as they traveled and explored, that this idea that this was a fixed point they could depend upon. And so that's why I came up with Northstar Commercial Partners. And there was also kind of a little bit of a biblical, point in there, and following the star, and the birth of Jesus and all of that. But really just this idea of exploring and having something dependable and something larger than myself.
Well, it's interesting that you. Now that I know that I'm on the right path, when I started KMG, it used to stand for Kimball Music Group.
Yeah.
And I kind of quickly realized putting your name in it, especially when I was so young, was not the best idea. And so we changed it. I was like, what else in KMG could really make sense? And we came up with Keep Music Going.
Oh, I like it.
And so, because I wanted to have something that was larger than myself and something that people could rally around. It's hard to rally around a name, but it's easy to rally around a fixed, dependable point in the sky. It's easy to everyone wants to keep music going. That's really easy, and so it's validating for me for sure. So one of the things that you make a huge point in, especially in your first book, The 7 Rings, is your faith. And how does that kind of intertwine in your business? Because a lot of people think that they have to be separate and don't mix church and state and don't do this, don't do that. But you have been unapologetically true to your faith, and you've let everyone know, hey, this is who I am. How has that served you? And I'll bet you it's helped you a heck of a lot more than it has hurt you in your 20 years of growing this company.
Yeah. So first, I don't wear my faith on my shirt sleeve, and I don't use it to go out and get business. It's just who I am as part of my core. Growing up, I was raised in a family of faith. In the second part, my mother remarried. First part was not a family of faith. And my father died when I was very young. And it was just about when I was ready to go to CU when I was 16 years of age. And I really started questioning to the core about faith and what is truth and those type of things. And so for my first couple years at CU Boulder, I was looking at all these different faiths and ideas, even though I grew up in the Christian tradition. And the more questions I asked, the more I realized, to me, that the Christian faith was true and real, and it was to the core of my being. So instead of being the faith of my parents, it was now my faith.
Very personal.
And very personal. And so for me, faith is at the center core, and I write about that in my first book, The 7 Rings. And I just ask people this simple question of what is at the core of your life? What drives you as a person? Because I think what drives you then emanates in the other aspects of your life. And for me, some people decide to put whatever in the center of their life, maybe success, financial, whatever it might be. I decided to put a relationship with God at the center of my life. And then there's other subsequent rings. And the final ring for me is business. And looking at me, you would think business is the number one priority in my life, when actuality it's the final and 7th ring. And so I just ask people to ask that question in their journey. And so faith for me is very personal. And this idea that no matter where you are, whether you have much or whether you have nothing, whether you're going through the worst economy since the Great Depression or whether things are going really well for you, this kind of bedrock in your life. And so faith has continued to be a real integral part of my life. And I don't wear it on my shirt sleeves. If people ask me about it, we'll talk about it and go from there. But I really want to have an authentic faith and relationship as I serve and love people in the community. And that's what I'd love to be known for. More than anything is that Brian truly loved people. He truly served people. And for me, that beats all the other, accolades and everything that might be out there.
Yeah, it's serving and being there for people. It's interesting because you really live that mantra, and just being connected to you for, I don't know, about a little over a year now, to where we really were doing some things together. One thing that my wife said is all of her interactions with you and your organization, we just got the book from the retreat, and she said, Brian really is just a world-class guy, isn't he? And I was like, yes. And then when we're at the retreat and there's so many of these just, again, world-class people, the introductions that you make on everyone's behalf, because some people don't know how to convey their story and convey who they can be or are to someone else. You are always there helping connect those dots. And I noticed that not just me, and I got a bunch of great introduction. I was like, wow, I didn't even know Brian knew that about me. That's so cool. And just watching you connect people, it's a very amazing thing to witness, and it gives me a lot of faith and hope in the future of business, because I'm like, that's how I want to run my business. And it's great to know that that is okay in today's day and age where people say business is cutthroat, and I've never seen anything about you be cutthroat.
Yeah.
You just connect. It's amazing.
Well, I appreciate you say that, and I've learned a lot from you as well. And for me, you think about it, we live in this world of so much connectivity in social media, whatever it might be, but we're also so disconnected.
Yeah.
And so I love connecting people together and building bridges and tearing down barriers among people. And we all just get so busy, it's hard to meet other people. And so my favorite thing is to go into a room and connect, Greg meets Sally and tell you 2 or 3 things about each other, and then just get out of the way and start that conversation and see great things happen. And, we've been fortunate in connecting a lot of people or new friendships and new business opportunities. And I want nothing for it other than to see people more connected and to figure out, hey, there's other good people going on the journey with me. And how can we go do good things in the world together?
That's so great. Well, so you have built this, again, world-class organization.
Thank you.
And we've gone 20 years down the road. So a lot of people, the way I think that young people miss the boat a little bit is they'll look at someone like you and they'll say, oh, this guy's just so much different, so this and so that. And in reality, they have to just accept the fact it's not that, it's just you're further up the road. And anyone can start. And because I do a lot of life coaching, I do a lot of mental performance coaching, and I help people on things, so many people want to immediately say, hey, I'm jumping into the real estate game, I'm going to do this, but they didn't go to school for it. They didn't take those 7 years. They didn't build up a nest egg. What are some of the things getting into real estate that you think that people should just be aware of and know? Because obviously real estate can kick your butt if we go into, say, a 2008, 2009. If you get in at the wrong time, it's very dependent on things like that. So what would you tell to some of the people who are saying, hey, you know what, I'm going to jump into real estate. I'm going to take there's a gajillion influencer classes for $9.97. You can learn how to flip houses. Those probably are a little laughable to you sometimes. But what would you tell these people?
Well, what I'd first start is to say, be an architect of your life. I think oftentimes people are more reactive than proactive. And when I say that, when you're reactive, a stimulus happens, you need to meet your rent payment or you need to pay for this or whatever. And so you immediately react instead of saying, you know what do I really want my life to be? And whether that's real estate or other industries, I encourage people to figure out what your passion is. You only get one shot at this thing called life. And this idea of saying, okay, what really drives me? Like,
Yeah.
what do I want my impact to be? And actually in church yesterday, they had a great thing about, these ideas of eulogies versus resume builders. And you think about what's on someone's gravestone. Like, what do they want to be known for on that? It's not,
that's
hey, my
interesting.
GPA was X, or I made X amount, or I was in this tax bracket. That's not, I haven't seen that on a gravestone.
Yeah.
I don't think you have either.
I have not. No.
But it's the idea, like, what do you really want to be known for? And then figure out how you can make your passion your profession.
Yeah.
Because when you do that, you don't work another day in your life. Now, I work extremely hard. People that know me, I put in a ton of hours, but it's really not work for me because I love what I do.
Yeah.
And so I encourage people, figure out what you love and try to make it your profession. And I think you're going to live a lot happier, more fulfilled life. And also, instead of focusing on you and your own bank account or where you want to live, focus on how you're going to serve others and actually make a positive impact in the world. Because when you can align those things, it's truly magical. As it relates to real estate, you look at most wealth creation in the world, and real estate is a component of it.
Absolutely.
For some people, it's all of it. For other people, it's a component of it. So regardless, I would encourage people to be educated and well-versed in real estate, whether you're buying your own home or whether you're having your own investment property. And then in terms of using real estate, go out and experience it. Try to take some classes, try to learn from others, try to find a mentor, whatever it might be. In my recent book that I just released a few months ago called Building, Lessons Learned in Real Estate and Life, I try to share some of those lessons with people to prepare them. It's a phenomenal, exciting industry. I absolutely love real estate. I mean, my specialty is buying a vacant building and creating jobs and opportunity in a local community for people and trying to drive superior returns. And when that happens, it is just a magical thing when we take a vacant or dilapidated building, create jobs and opportunity for the community, and make a good return on that. It's just so much fun.
That is, well, and that kind of it goes to my point exactly. I was actually talking with Drew, who's here, and he was talking to me about, hey, this is exciting in real estate. And I said, our relationship with Brian. Anybody who's going to get into real estate, if it's not their passion, that's why people like him have built these great companies, because you can get involved in real estate, but let someone who's an expert and it is their passion manage the asset.
Yeah.
And so I know that you have a lot of investors that come to you and take part in your passion. And I think that's really exciting. And that's what I've always told people is, let the expert be the expert. You can't try to be an expert at everything. So unless, like, I love what you said, if you're going to jump in, just make sure that it is your passion. Make sure it is something you want to spend a lot of time in. And there's a big difference between active investing and passive investing.
Yeah.
I think people need to understand that. You don't have to be so active in absolutely everything.
Yeah. I mean, even if things changed at Northstar, there's nothing else that I want to do professionally as much as I love not only building a company and being an entrepreneur and business owner, but in being involved in real estate. And for us, again, we do two things. We buy vacant distressed buildings and create jobs and opportunities. There's that social impact there. And then we work with corporations to buy or build facilities for them around the country. And in all those deals, we bring in outside investors.
Yeah.
And so, yes, we're creating jobs and opportunity, not only in our company, but also in the community with the buildings that we have. And then we have investors come along. And it's so much fun for me when I had an investor not too long ago, this past year, where he and his wife had a couple of $1 million for their retirement. That was their plan. And they built it up from nothing. And they invested in an opportunity and were able to get a 3X on their money. So we took X amount, times it times 3, and that's their new amount. And he came to me, he said, Brian, I just got to thank you. And he said, you helped us now have a better retirement than we could have ever hoped for. And that means that I can also spend more time with my grandkids and help send them to college and help my kids, because they're struggling right now. And that just really touched me, this idea of, hey, we're trying to make good returns, but it really means impact for real people at their dining room tables, or them making their decisions about what their retirement may look like. And that's just so much fun, and it's such a great blessing.
Yeah. Wow. And a lot of people don't see those kinds of stories. They see, oh, this big company did this, but you're really changing a lot of lives, like you said, on both sides of it, to people getting a better retirement and jobs that didn't literally exist before. So that's changing lives on many levels. Let's talk about in the past, adversity, if we're talking about adversity in the past and specifically in real estate, now a lot of people are going to talk about 2008, 2009.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get through that crazy time in America?
Yeah. Well, prior to 2008, 2009, our primary specialty was buying vacant buildings for 50% or less of replacement cost value and trying to create jobs and opportunity in the community. Well, we bought vacant, and then we went into 2009, and what happened 2008, 2009 is things became more vacant.
Yeah.
And so it was a really challenging time. And for me, my employees meant a lot to me. And so I tried to keep everybody employed during that time frame. And you look at most economic, cycles, they're down period for about 18 months. Well, this was much longer and much deeper than before. And so it was kind of like trying to get a plane off the runway, right?
Yeah.
I was holding, trying to get that plane to lift off before we would crash into the trees.
Yeah.
And the amount of cash flow and burn rate was unbelievable. And
Yeah.
that's the thing of the other side of being an entrepreneur and business owner that people often don't, consider, is this idea that all of your employees have to get paid first and before you. And so during that time period, I was, providing and injecting a lot of money and all my savings into my company to keep it alive, to keep people, because you got to pay your employees. And so,
wait, really?
Yeah, I know,
Is that a
shocking.
thing?
I know it is a thing.
Okay, all right.
And so I didn't get a paycheck, and they had to be paid. And so it just depleted my, personal reserves, and I held on, and we fought through it. And we had a couple of assets that we had to deal with. It was a very painful time.
Yeah.
But it was also a time of great blessing in that, one, in challenging times, you really know who your friends are, and you know who you can depend on.
Yep.
When you're making great money and living in a nice
Everyone's
house,
your friend.
everybody's your friend, and they always want to hang out with you. But when you're in the pit of trying to just get out of things, then you really know who your friends are. And for me, those are those lifelong, blood brothers and blood sisters that I want to keep with, and they're the kind of people that I would know. A friend of mine during the down economy, I went to his house, and we just had my bachelor party a few months ago, and he brought up a thing, and it really touched me. He said, Brian, when I was on Christmas Day and someone repossessed my car on Christmas Day, when I went bankrupt, you're the only friend that showed up at my front door, and you handed me the keys to your car, and you gave me $1,000 in cash. And I totally forgot about that story, but that's the kind of friend that I was to him. And when I had my challenges, that's the kind of friend he was to me.
Wow.
There's no judgment. You don't owe me anything. I just love you. We're coming alongside of each other. We're all going to go through it. And I don't judge you whether your economic status is here or down here, and whether you're being kicked in the gut. And so those are the kind of people that you want. So one, who your friends are. And then two, one of the other things that I saw is that things are going to happen. And so my greatest regret in 2008, 2009 isn't what I bought or what I owned. My greatest regret is that I wasn't more well prepared to take advantage of one of the greatest buying opportunities we may ever see.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
right.
when Albertsons grocery stores left Colorado, I went in at about that time and bought every single Albertsons grocery store in Colorado vacant for $9.25 a square foot.
Oh my God.
You and I were just talking about your rent here and the expense of it, right? Now think about buying this building for $9.25 a square foot.
I'll do it in a heartbeat.
Yeah, almost what you pay for rent, right?
Yeah.
Is what you could have bought this building for, thing. And so those are the kind of buying opportunities that you see during that time. So as we're looking into a recession now, we're getting well prepared and saying, okay, how do we want to position ourselves to be well positioned, for that time and that opportunity?
Wow. Well, that's it's always fun to talk to people who know exactly where they're going, and it's great to have you use what happened in 2008, 2009 as a kind of, no pun intended, maybe very intended, Northstar, so that you know that you are prepared for anything moving forward. So let's talk a little bit. I know that you just got married, so congratulations.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
We have
Got the wedding ring on.
We have to get your wife on this show too. She's such an amazing, interesting lady.
She's already launching 2 more companies now, so you got to connect with her. She's just amazing. I just love her. She's great. Thank you.
You look at the smile.
Yeah,
on
I know. I tell you, I just got out away from the honeymoon. There's just a glow about me.
Yeah, that's awesome. But unfortunately, in one of the best moments of your life, you just went through a bunch of personal adversity. Let's talk a little bit about what happened right before your wedding on things that you had to go through. But your company doesn't stop needing you in these moments. Your wife doesn't stop needing you in these moments. And
Point.
unfortunately, life does have to go on. What are some of the mental conversations that you have to have with yourself and things that you went through so that we can kind of understand how do you bounce back in the face of adversity so well?
So we'll start just kind of some context. So last year I ran for a statewide office in Colorado for state treasurer of Colorado. And, we campaigned for 380 some days. And my campaign manager, had worked with me before, but literally became a blood brother, and nothing that I wouldn't do for him and him for me. And, when you're going through the trenches like that, you just go through a lot together.
Yeah.
And we thought we were going to win. But even though I'm a center-right candidate, if you're that in Colorado last year, you just didn't win.
Yeah.
And so unfortunately, because I had an R by my name versus a D, just didn't win. And so we put it all on the line, and we thought we were going to win. We were leading by double digits a few weeks before the election day. And, he put it all on the line too. And unfortunately, we lost. And he really went into a struggle with himself. And so he started traveling around, whatever it might be. And so one of the last trips that he was going to go on the beginning of the year is to Kenya. And at 29 years of age, they just found out his wife and him were pregnant on a Tuesday. We were supposed to go skiing that night together. He goes to Kenya and unfortunately dies in a helicopter crash. And his wife just had the baby this past week, so it's just a blessing to see that. She named the baby Mercy, which is very touching. But anyway, so he died on me, and it was just heartbreaking. It was really, really tough having someone who's 29 years of age, is too young and too vibrant and making too much of an impact. And then unfortunately during my honeymoon, my assistant of many years, at 27 years of age, she was back at a football game with her father at Notre Dame, went out to get an Uber, turns around to go back, and a car hits her and kills her. And it was just tragic at 27 years of age. So I just brought my whole team last weekend up to the ranch, and we, planted a Colorado blue spruce in her honor. And so, that in between, you then have this wedding. So this wonderful, magical time of being connected to my best friend and to my wife now. And then seeing that juxtaposition of losing people. And then also had a situation this year with the largest betrayal with some employees that I had. And so during all that time, struggle happens. And the question is, what is our response going to be to it? And I'm not one of those people who licks my wounds for long. When you lose people that young of age, it really makes you even realize how blessed you are for this thing called life, and to be precious, and to make sure you're reaching out, letting people know that you love them, let them know how you feel about them, because you just never know.
No. I remember in our very first podcast, my huge takeaway, and I've used it, and I don't know why, because, we hear it in so many ways, but the way you conveyed it and the way that you really got across to me, and I said, I asked the question a lot, hey, what's the one thing you would tell people? What's this, that, and the other? And you looked at me as serious. I just got goosebumps. That's the tuning fork. You know that things are great when your tuning fork goes off, which is goosebumps. And you just looked at me and you said, life is a blessing. And that's how you absolutely have to look at it. And I don't know why it just hit me so much more profoundly at that moment. And I thought it was amazing. Because I've interviewed so many people who money was very much their focal point. And you really let money just be a byproduct of you making a difference. And I thought it was so interesting how your number one thing you would want to tell people was life is a blessing and you need to treat it as such.
Yeah, I really believe that. And I also tell people too, when I'm at my hardest times, again, you can look at the trappings of success and say, oh, well, he's living life large, things are great for him. We all have struggles, no matter where you are economically, no matter where you are in the educational spectrum, we all have struggles. And I tell people that when I'm at my lowest times, my prayer is to start off with a very simple prayer to say, hey, you know what, I'm thankful that I can still touch and feel and breathe and see. And I go through this list of everything that I'm thankful for. And by the time you get down to the issue at hand, it helps to put it in perspective.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not saying that your issue that you're having isn't a struggle and isn't painful, but it's the idea that, hey, you know what, life is truly a blessing, and it's very, very short. And it's about perspective.
Yeah.
And this idea to say, yeah, I'm going through this time, but wow, I'm so blessed.
Yeah.
And, you can go down to Children's Hospital today and go in the cancer ward, and you can get some perspective in terms
Yeah.
of where your life is right now.
Yeah.
And so that's why I just encourage people, and just to listen, be a friend who's just willing to listen and love on someone and just say, hey, I'm here to listen and to be alongside of you.
You know, one thing we were talking about when you first got here is we were talking a little bit about that um, thing that you just went through where you got really stabbed in the back.
Yeah.
And it was amazing to me to where just on your face you weren't wearing anger, you weren't wearing anything. You just said, look, I'm not going to hold on to that. I wish the very best for people. And I thought it was very awesome watching someone even talk about it privately, because a lot of people, when they're not on camera, they're like, oh, this guy, and you're like, look, I'm not cynical, I'm not spiteful, I'm not out to get anybody. It's a learning lesson, I'm moving on. And how do you take that, knowing that, and then trust again?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, on the first part of that is, when somebody wrongs you or you go through a time, like a challenge like that, you get the choice of what is your response going to be, right? The thing is done.
Yeah.
Right? They've either stabbed you, they've wronged you, whatever it might be. It's this thing called life, unfortunately. And what is your response going to be?
Yeah.
You can either languish and be angry and wish hate upon them or try to figure out how to get back to them. And every moment that you spend on that, they continue to get at you.
Yeah.
They continue to win, shall we say.
Yeah, exactly.
And so for me, I said, you know what? Lesson learned. And I wish them great blessing and success. But I want nothing to do with them anymore. That I have to protect my heart. I have to build hedges at some point.
Yeah.
Because if you, continue to let them wrong you, then shame on you for that. And you just got to say, I got to move on and just go on with life. In terms of the cynical side, you got to watch it, because I don't want to be a cynical person. I don't want to be the kind of person who's stingy. I want to be a person of love and generosity. And in being that, it also makes you vulnerable at times, right? And you have to realize that in that vulnerability, there's also this blessing and an opportunity to be even more generous. And I think the more generous you are and the more giving you are, good things happen.
Absolutely.
And by far, many more good things have happened in my life than bad things.
Yeah.
But every once in a while, someone's gonna get you. And you have to decide, what are you going to do? And for me, I don't want to be a cynical, judgmental, negative person. I want to put my energies into being positive and making a positive impact.
Absolutely.
And sometimes I may mess up, and sometimes people will take advantage of me. But you know what? That is on them. It's not on me.
It really
and
is.
they have to live with themselves. And this idea of, whether you want to call it karma or whatever you want to call it, different people believe in different things. Things come back to them. And even if it doesn't come back to them, I want to focus my energies in being positive. Because every moment that I'm negative or I try to think about that, I'm wasting my time.
That's about the best perspective you can have on it. And in doing that, you're not letting them control the narrative. You're really controlling your own narrative, which I think is really important. So let's talk about the present state of Northstar. We've got over $1 billion under management, and it seems like in today's day and age, because we run a school here, and when I talk to them, everyone's looking at the social network and the Snapchats of the world, and they're watching movies like The Founder, and it seems like kids these days are thinking that it's easy to make $1 billion. And and I always tell them the same thing. Okay, well, if it's easy, please go do it, and so you can pay your tuition on time. But in building something where you have that B word in front of what you're up to, what was the realization like when you realized, oh my gosh, we hit that mark? Because I mean, that is such a huge mark for any company to accomplish. What was it like when you first realized that? And just explain to us that realization of realizing I have a company that has a B involved in the numbers. That's just unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, first I would say, isn't it amazing that we live in a time in the world history where someone can come from modest means, can come with no name, no family name or history or, hierarchy, and actually go out and create something of value for the community and create $1 billion. Isn't that awesome?
It's amazing.
I mean, right now there's all this discussion of, socialism versus communism versus capitalism. You know what? Capitalism has freed and create more opportunity and blessed more people and create a higher standard of living than any other system. And I think we have to watch about all these isms and thinking that all isms are equal.
Yeah.
Think about empowering people. The concept of capitalism, yeah, it has its issues, but
Yes.
overall, it has raised our standard of living unbelievably.
Absolutely.
And so I just think it's amazing that someone from an inner city or anywhere else, countryside, can actually go out and create a company or make $1 billion. Isn't that awesome?
It's incredible.
Now, that being said, that's a lot of money, and people don't even realize that. And there's been so many companies who fail. And the stat is something to the effect of 50% of companies, fail within their first year, and then another 50% of that number fail within their first 5 years, or whatever the stat is. The point is, not many companies actually survive.
That's true.
And so I would encourage people, you know what, go figure out what your dreams are, but don't make your only measure of success how much money you make.
Exactly.
Figure out that passion, and if you're fortunate of creating value, and the more value you add to society, the more that you're going to get in return. It's this really kind of awesome,
exactly right.
equation. In terms of Northstar, I started from nothing. I'd saved up the money. I didn't have outside investors. I didn't come from a family of money. I came from a small town on the western slope of Colorado, Olathe, Colorado. And I always had a vision of creating this world-class organization, and I didn't know how big it was going to be. And I didn't measure success by how many people I had. I just knew I wanted to create something great and to put it all on the field.
That's so
and
great.
to help architect that. And it's constantly fine-tuning that engine. And then all of a sudden, we broke the $1 billion mark. We're now at $1.5 billion, and I think we'll break $2 billion here in the coming year. And we own assets in 15 states throughout America, and then we're 3 primary verticals: buying those vacant assets, and again, that social impact of creating jobs and opportunity, working with corporations, and then doing a value add concept. And so I want to continue to build a world-class organization right here in Denver that's competing head-to-head with LA, Chicago, New York, Beijing, London, wherever it might be. But we get to live in Colorado.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's so awesome finding these A players and putting them on the field and building a team. And as the founder and CEO, setting that strategy of how we're going to go out and block and tackle. And I hope to make as many millionaires around me as I possibly can, because the more that I help those in my company to achieve their dreams, the more that they'll be blessed and have a positive impact as well. So I've had a lot of long-term employees, and it's just so much fun building that company.
Wow, that's such a cool way to look at it. And one of the things that I always say is you have to be before you can do, and you have to do before you can have.
Love it.
And I'd say the equation of life is be plus do equals have. And if you look at the way you just explained $1 billion, you became someone who did something that the byproduct was, hey, we crossed that threshold. It was never, oh, I need to be a $1 billion company.
No.
Oh, I need to do this. You just kept becoming more, and then you kept doing more. And this really is a byproduct. And that's really fun to just see in action on that big of a stage.
Yeah. And what I love about it is this idea that, as an entrepreneur business owner, is that what I think about in a conversation or whatever it might be, I can actually implement in a matter of hours.
Yeah.
And to compete at the highest levels, like right now we're doing data centers, and it's one of the most competitive environments, period, in the world right now, and one of the biggest growth rates, an estimated growth rate of 67% year on year. I mean, it's just unbelievable where data centers are going. But we're doing deals and transactions with the highest levels of people. And these are very smart people.
Yeah.
And it's just very humbling and honoring to be this small town kid, who in my town, we didn't have a stoplight, to be in some of these boardrooms and to have my team alongside of me. I have different people. We hire people of all ages and different experience or whatever, but like to assemble this team, and we're going head to head with the biggest and the best.
That's so
and
great.
it's kind of a David and Goliath, kind of story, and it's just a lot of fun.
Oh, that's so great.
Yeah.
So in the future, what are some of the fun things that we're going to be working on as Northstar? What's the future look like? What are some of the things you're most excited about?
Yeah. Well, I would say, at 20 years of age now as a company, we're just getting started.
Yeah.
And one of my personal goals is not retirement. I don't have desire to retire.
Yeah.
I believe we were created to create.
Yeah.
And whether you're serving, in philanthropy or business or public service and politics, whatever it might be, like get out on the field and make a positive difference. And so Northstar right now, I just shared it with my team. We had a fireside chat up at the ranch. I said, we're just at that hockey stick. And a lot of people say, oh, you're at $1.5 billion. You're already way up here. No, we're just at that curve of that hockey stick, and we're going to go like this.
Yeah, it's exponential now.
It is.
That's
And
so great.
we're going to continue to compete out in the field. And then we also want to be a real leader, not only a thought leader in commercial real estate, but also a leader in terms of the positive impact. When you think about commercial real estate owners, you don't get all these warm and fuzzies of thinking, oh, these people are so kind-hearted and such givers and such whatever. It's usually a well-heeled set that you're, paying rent to or whatever, and you don't think of what is their positive impact. And so for me, I want to be a leader when it comes to new environmental efficiencies and technologies in commercial real estate.
That's cool.
How can we, take assets that may be environmentally impacted from a negative perspective and putting them back into productive work environments?
Oh, wow.
How can we be a leader in terms of saying, hey, we're going to take X% of what we make on this and we're going to donate it to charities around the world and really be good givers and help, create some fuel in those tanks for water projects in Africa or education projects in Chicago or whatever it might be. And to really be a corporate citizen with a heart. And I see a spot right up the middle of the field for us because I work in a very archaic staid industry. And whether it be racial diversity, whether it be thought diversity, it just doesn't really exist as much in commercial real estate. And so we want to help shatter those walls to say, you know what, we can actually be a company that does make a positive impact in the community, that does help investors, but also, can create great returns and make this unique perspective. So we're just having fun, and what you're going to see is a lot more work in the data center space and technology space. Also, I think commercial real estate or use of space is going to change dramatically before our very eyes in the next 5 to 10 years. You think about autonomous cars, you think about working from home and all of that, and we want to be on the cutting edge of figuring out how
and the co-working environment.
And the co-working. I mean, it's unbelievable. And how we interact and touch real estate now is going to be dramatically different over the next 5 to 10 years. And so we want to be on the cutting edge of that to say, here's a new, unique environment.
Wow, that's really cool. So you just came out with a second book, and that I heard that you recorded it at a great place.
It was amazing. Absolutely the best. KMG.
We had the pleasure of doing it, and I'll share with you a story of his engineer, Dan Pope, who was doing the editing and the recording. He said, because it was his first real audiobook that he went through. And he said, I'm kind of glad that we had to do different makeup sessions and different edits because he got the chance to listen to it. He said he listened to it probably 25 times while he was doing it. And he said, I legitimately learned something every single time I listened to it, which I thought was amazing. And it just shows you, hey, when you go through a story or you go through something that you're learning, you don't always get everything the first pass. It's okay to listen to it multiple times. You have a copy right here, so let's just show that really quick. This is building lessons learned in real estate and life. And I've listened to the book. A few of our employees have also listened to the book, and it really is. I love the word edutainment. It's educational and entertaining because you have stories, and then the audio version has some anecdotes in it, and it's just such a I think it's a very important read for people because, again, it also gives people hope of what's possible. And I really invite everyone to take a look at it. Also, he has the book, The Seven Rings, and just connect with Brian as much as you can and have those conversations, because even though, yes, he has billions under management, I mean, he's the most approachable person who runs a company like that I've ever met.
Thank you.
And I think that the world, if they know that people running organizations that big, if they can know who those people are, they're going to understand that this negative press of all of these people who are supposedly the 1% and this, that, and the other, and people who make money are basically evil, it's really not true. And in everything that we just talked about, you're creating jobs, you're creating opportunity, you're creating returns, you're connecting people. I mean, I have some relationships again and it was funny because I didn't know how to take it when I went up to your retreat. And you said, I hope that everyone finds at least one lifelong friend. That was your big mission. There was no pitching. There was no, hey, I want you here. This is now. Please go invest. Now this. No, it was. I want everyone to at least make one lifelong friend, and I made more than a few.
That's awesome.
And it's amazing to watch someone be a thought leader and a dot connector. One of the terms that I say in I hold up my phone in my my advertising agency, and I say, in a world where we're all connected, no one's actually connecting.
Yeah.
And I like these podcasts because it allows people to connect with you and understand the thoughts behind your business at a much deeper level than, because on the outside looking out, like you said, it's not a diverse industry. It's very archaic in your words, and everything you're talking about is that we're going to watch it change. You talked about the environment and opportunity and people. Everything is being driven to people, and I love the saying, real wealth building happens by making money at the service of others, not the expense of others.
Yeah, I love that.
And you absolutely, and you use the word serve multiple times. And I think that it is such an amazing thing that you're doing. Yeah. And I'm really excited because I'll tell you, I absolutely agree with you. I think as quote unquote big as maybe some people think you are, I think that you're just getting started as well.
Oh, thank you.
And it's going to be fun to just know that I got to see before the hockey stick. I'm going to hold you to it.
I knew him before.
In another 10 years, I'm getting you back on this show, regardless of where we're at. But I just thank you so much for coming in, and I really appreciate your time, because I know that you have a lot of people asking for it, and it means a lot to me that you'd come and sit on our show and help people understand what it means to be an entrepreneur, because that's really what this show is about. I think that true entrepreneurship is where the exponential part of life comes from. And it all starts with creating. I mean, can you imagine a world where people weren't creative and didn't create? And I think that most people, when they say, oh, that person's really creative, they think of people in my industry where it's in advertising, or it is in videos, or it's in music, or it's in all of these things. But the thing is you've been unbelievably creative in the commercial real estate space.
Yeah.
And I think bringing that creative element kind of supercharges. I always tell people, look, I don't really care what you do, because I can always buy what someone does. I can't buy who someone is. And so therefore who you are supercharges what you do. Yeah. And I think that's one of the reasons why we can look at Northstar and see its trajectory, because of who you are at the helm is supercharging what you guys do.
Well, thank you. Well, I want to do a shout out first to Dan, for putting up with me and doing all those recordings. Yeah. And I want to thank you and KMG for, doing the recording on the book. And you gave me a great recommendation. Unlike my first book that I just wrote, from the pages, you said, what, Brian, add some anecdotes. And it was just so much fun adding them. And so the audio version is different than the written one. And I just really appreciate that.
Absolutely.
And you guys have done a great job. And I just appreciate you as a person, just how positive you are in creating this, because so many people need this. Yeah. And, I wrote my book, both books, 100% of the proceeds are donated away. I just did it to try to share some lessons that I've learned and try to encourage people in some way. And literally just yesterday, I got an email from somebody that had served in Colorado politics, was a representative for many years. And this gentleman, I don't know if you remember, a few years ago, he was bit by a mosquito, and he got the West Nile virus.
Okay.
And he went from fully walking and functional to they didn't know if he was ever going to walk again in a wheelchair. And he's had this struggle coming back. And he wrote me this email yesterday, and he said, Brian, I just finished your book, and I got to tell you, you just blessed me, and you encouraged me to go out and do even more. Oh, wow. And he went on with some other things as well. And, just that one email makes all the hours and all the days worth it for writing the book.
That's so awesome.
And it's stuff like that, and I get those from time to time, and it is just a blessing to be able to
Yeah.
do that and share that. And so, again, it's you get a choice. So how are you going to live in life? And are you going to be negative and just be a part of the world, or are you going to go out and try to be a point of light and be positive and making an impact? And we've decided to do the latter.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for doing what you do for the Colorado community. And again, this is part of our Impactor series. And it was funny when we came up with this idea, we were thinking, okay, who's our top 10 list of people we know who make a real impact? And when I say impact, I mean this is a real impact, not just a thought leader, not just someone who's charismatic, but who makes an impact. And you were at the very top of our list.
Well, see, I thought the first 20 said no, and I was like number 21 down the list or something, but I appreciate that.
Yeah, well, it's been a blessing to get to know you. I know that as our relationship grows, we're at that hockey stick point too, because it's only going to get better. But thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it. And yeah, we'll share all of this stuff with you. We just the gratitude is so much. We appreciate you more than you can than I can put into words. And I just your story blesses me a lot. And every time I get to hang out with you, talk with you, interact, it truly does expand what I think is possible. And you have blessed my life beyond measure.
Well, I'm looking forward to accomplishing some great things with you. I think we're just getting started together.
Agreed.
Thanks,
all right.
man.
This has been the Final Percent Podcast with the first Impactor series with Brian Watson. Again, he's with Northstar Commercial Partners, and they're just getting started. We're just getting started on here, but thank you guys so much for watching and tuning in, and we will see you next time.
It's the final percent. The final percent.